Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Bell from the Hampton Roads Innovation Collaborative. We are the region's technology council, 501c6 that's been in business since the late 90s. And we do programs and various things to bolster the strength of our regional ecosystem here. And Tech Tuesdays are certainly a good example of that, with some great programs coming to you once a month on a once-a-month basis. So we want to thank Cox for their ongoing sponsorship of this event. So they help us out with that. Very appreciative. I don't think we have anybody from Cox on board. Nope, I'm looking at the list. We do not. And so today we've got a very, very, very good program. It's something that Chris and I have been chatting about for some time now with his business Netaris. And so the whole exporters activity and journey, I think, will be fascinating with this. I do want to introduce in alphabetical order Aaron Miller, Director, International Business Development of Virginia Small Business Development Center. I hope I got that right. And Chris Mashut, entrepreneur and founder of Netaris. And Chris is, even though he's got a busy schedule with his business, he's not on the road today. His video is not feeding well because of his being mobile, but we've got him on audio, and we're grateful for that. Aaron, you've got some slides, and I think with that, I'll turn the session over to you.
Great, thanks, Dan. Dan, would you mind if I know we're recording this, but if the other attendees were open to introducing themselves, would that be okay?
Fine with me.
Okay, maybe we could just take a quick round robin here, just to quickly introduce ourselves so that Chris and I know who you are, and we could just make this more informal and hopefully engaging, because that's the way it was meant to be anyhow. So I'll start with Stephen, since I see him and know him.
Hi, Aaron. Hey, it sounds like an interesting presentation. I'm looking forward to it. I'm Steve Hall. I'm with SCORE, which is affiliated with the U.S. Small Business Administration. We do with a lot of entrepreneurs want to start up their business, and I get quite a number of people starting up their business, especially recent refugees actually coming in from Afghanistan. They want to start up and part of the American dream to start their own business. And a lot of them have affiliations with many countries, so it's sort of fun to deal with.
Thanks, Steve. And your background was with BIS for many years as well, so you know a lot about exporting.
Yeah, export controls. We basically say what you can't export, where you can't go. So get to Bureau of Industry and Security, part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm with the BEDP International Trade, covering Southwest Virginia, basically everything west of Roanoke, and always wanting to learn more about how companies are being successful with export, and trying to figure ways to be creative and helpful. And the new refugees coming and starting new businesses, excellent. So thank you for letting me participate.
Thanks, Mike. Alan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Alan Hagerman. I'm a VP of technology at a very small startup trying to survive and make it, based out of Alexandria, and I'm a board member with HRIC.
Great, thank you, Alan. Tim, would you like? Oh, Tim just dropped off. Jane, would you like to introduce yourself? And you don't need to if you're not interested. I see you're with Ex-Im Bank, though.
Yeah, no problem at all. My apologies, my video, I'm traveling, so my video is kind of spotty, so I'm going to leave my camera off. But yeah, I have not attended one of these presentations, and I, just like the other gentleman, wanted to hear this export journey. I work at the Export-Import Bank, and we support small businesses as they export, and so I'm always interested in hearing their stories, for even more success stories and ways we can help. So that's what I'm doing.
Thanks, Jane.
Sure.
And CJ?
Hi guys, my video is off as well. I'm CJ Spady. I'm with Fahrenheit Advisors, We are a roadblock remover for middle market, small to middle market companies in their HR, sales, and human resources areas. And I also have another, I'm the market leader for the 757. So I also have another hat that I wear. I'm the chair of a group called Association for Corporate Growth, which is a chapter of a national organization that brings together deal makers in the M&A space, private equity, investment banking, growth advisors to collaborate and bring growth, that conversation of growth to the market. So this chapter is in the 757. So that's me.
Great. Thank you, CJ. And then I see John Strayhorn just joined. John, or we've gone around, just kind of briefly introduce each other because we're a small group here. If you'd like to introduce yourself. You're muted.
How about now?
Hey, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right, very good. Good. As this is actually the first time I've corrected my PC. I had a problem with it on a Zoom earlier today, so I'm glad to see that the audio is working. So just background on myself, I'm president of Global Insurance Services, LLC. We provide export and domestic credit insurance for companies that need to insure their receivables against non-payment for commercial or political reasons, either on the domestic side or on the international side. And so we've been doing this for about 21 years. Prior to that, I was a international banker for 11 years.
Great. Thanks, John.
Yep.
So this is our group here today so far. And I'll just quickly start off. I think most of you really know who I am and what I do. But for the two people that I don't know on this, I have just 3 slides to run through. So let me just pull that up. That's not the one that wants to show. Here we go. Okay. So just really quickly, and then we'll get to the conversation, which will be more free-flowing with Chris. But Virginia SBDC, we are a statewide network supporting entrepreneurs and small businesses, whether they're pre-venture or they've already started up and need assistance in anything from marketing and business planning to getting a loan to going into new international markets. We are funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration and headquartered out of George Mason University. But we have 27 offices around the Commonwealth. And for those of you in the Hampton Roads region, we're based out of the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce. We're primarily in chambers and economic development agencies, as well as some community colleges and other universities across the state too. So you should be able to connect with any of us. And if you need any assistance, you can certainly reach out to me and I can connect you to your local office. The International Business Development Team, we're a small program headquartered at George Mason. So we work across the entire state. Together, we have more than 40 years of experience in international trade, spanning trade finance, export and import compliance, supply chain, you name it, marketing and management. In addition to myself, I'm the director, but Chris Van Orden is our manager and Dulcie Zanizer is our senior international trade specialist. So if you're reaching out as a Virginia company, you're going to be talking to one or more of us in this. We tend to specialize just based on our experience. Chris what comes out of the food and beverage space, and Dulcie out of technology and more the export control space. So in addition to us, we're supported by a great team of researchers at George Mason University. It's a really diverse group from a number of different disciplines around the world. It's a competitive internship that we offer, and we do pay our students. So it's great to get some high quality work done for them or from them if you're a Virginia-based business. Always like to highlight our partners in this, and I think this is a real differentiator of the SBDC as well, as we always talk about our partners. And you see here today, we have VEDP and Exim Bank on this call as well, but we work closely with both of these entities as well as the U.S. Commercial Service. So you'll hear Chris and I talking about these different organizations here today too. In terms of trainings that we offer, we do a lot of cohort and subject specific trainings. So this last year we did a program to develop an export management and compliance program. We did an international business plan program. We're also doing a lot in the space of trade finance and working capital solutions. The USMCA has been a really big point of emphasis for us for the last few years. So accessing and utilizing free trade agreements, international e-commerce is another space that we were doing quite a bit in earlier, still have some ability to help companies in that space, but our contract with a contractor came to a close. So our most robust offerings are past at this point. We're also an accredited training program for the Certified Global Business Professional, which is a certification that's managed by NASBITE, which is an association for international trade educators. So we're offering that class right now. It's a 12-hour class that we handle all virtual as well to prepare you to sit for that exam. In terms of our counseling, we are, in addition to doing some small market research reports for companies, some of our companies can qualify for larger research reports as well. All of our services are no cost except for a few of the training programs. Dan and I were just talking about this and the need to actually charge a little bit of money to get people to show up, since we had a lot of RSVPs for this program today, and it is what it is today. You can come and go as you like, but most of our services are no cost, and everything is confidential. We personalize it to you. Our services are utilized by companies that are new to export as well as experienced exporters. And then we do a lot when it comes to standard research guides and export guides that we can direct you to, business planning checklists and other international trade topics. We do a lot of referrals to other agencies that you might not be aware of as well. And then, of course, we as a NASBITE Trade Passport is a video library on a lot of different trade topics that is all available to you at no cost. So if you'd ever like to learn more, you can send me an email. I'll also put it in the chat. You can also visit our website to learn more. And with that, I will stop the share and start our conversation here. So Chris, it's great to have you on the phone, and I hope that your journey is going well. Tell us a little bit about Nataris, what your background was before you started the company and how you came about starting it.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. My audio good?
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, my name's Chris Mockhout, founder and CEO of Nataris. How we got in this journey is developed almost 8 years ago, this concept of aiding heavy equipment operators so they could see in the blind. And what that basically means is you have big machines such as tower cranes, tugboats, overhead cranes, reach stackers, container loaders. All these big machines move a lot of big equipment, and oftentimes, just due to the nature of the equipment, they operate in the blind. We invented this camera system called a hoist cam. The hoist cam's a purpose-built wireless camera system designed to work on material handling equipment so the operators can see effectively it. From there, as we've grown and participated in Aaron's program here, we've gotten a lot of traction, gotten a lot of feedback, especially from our customers, that management themselves were operating in the blind. And we sell the hoist cam systems literally all over the world. What we basically flushed out from there with our camera system was the management wanted to see, but they didn't want to sit there and watch the video stream. You can imagine if any of you have like a Ring camera doorbell, and if you just sat there and stared at the Ring camera doorbell in the front of your house all day to wait for an event to happen that was of interest to you, you'd probably go a little bit crazy. Well, just like a Ring camera doorbell can tell you when somebody gets there, we've developed AI, as it's called, or artificial intelligence, to actually identify objects in pretty much any camera, including the hoist cam, to identify their IDs and their location and tell the businesses where their stuff is. So that's a little bit, and that platform, our artificial intelligence, is called SiteTrax. It's spelled SITETRAX, and the website's sitetrax.io. There's a little intro on our business. Myself, I'm a computer engineer from Virginia Tech, been a serial entrepreneur for the last 20 years, and just love the emergence of technology and solutions for business today. We focus primarily on my focus is primarily on the B2B side of things.
Great, thank you, Chris. And yes, I've watched your demos before. You've showed them to me. I've seen them in action down there in downtown Norfolk with some of the developments too. And it's really been quite an intervention that's improved safety and efficiency at the same time, and really exciting company. So how did you get started exporting, and did people find you online, or how did that happen for you?
Yeah, the first time we did it. So I've always been a big proponent of a good online presence, and one of the aspects of having a good online presence or a website that can resonate with others in the world that can access your business is you'll from time to time get inquiries into, hey, I'm from the UK, I'm interested in your stuff, or I'm from Australia, I'm interested in your stuff. And what we found is we had a lot of people inquiring, but we had no idea even how do you get stuff to the UK? How do you get stuff to Australia? Can you do terms with them? You might sell a couple of things to someone in another country. Is there a potential market opportunity out there? I was quite literally deer in headlights. I know how to speak English. I know how to, I think at least I know how to do business here in the States. But the thing that I found out very, very quickly, if you're not there in that country, if you don't have representation in that country, it's a lot harder to do business, especially if there's demand for your product or service out there.
So Chris, that's a great point. So how do you go about finding representation in these markets that you have a presence on? And why is it so important? Is it because of the after sales component, or the training, or just making sure that they're using this correctly?
All of the above. It really depends on the market opportunity in that particular country. I've found that in countries where we might sell one or two to countries, smaller countries like Turkey, for instance, or we might sell many in the UK, or even Australia. It depends on the volume and the dollar amount that you're going to be potentially moving in that area. If it's a couple widgets for a couple $1,000s a year, it's not normally worth it trying to get some sort of representation there. So that's where I'm going to be doing a lot of plugs for like what Aaron does and a lot of the other attendees in this session. That's where I look to tap into the value of those networks when the opportunity was appropriate. So as you would expand like an operations from the East Coast of the U.S., where we're here in Norfolk, to maybe the western part of the state in Virginia, or even on the western part of the country. Each of those kind of regions have different demands in business, and you need to understand the environment you're going into in the business, and if you're not from those countries, it's a whole other ball of wax trying to understand how to get into those markets and how to have proper representation.
Great, thank you, Chris. So it sounds like you really took an approach that allowed you to have some, like, to be reactive to inquiries from overseas, but then prioritizing markets where you invested more in, have that representation on the ground because they're important enough that you want to really grow your sales in those markets.
Yeah, that's correct. And just making sure that culturally your product or service fits into that particular region, that geographic region. Some areas, I mean, there were so many different obstacles. Just don't even get me started with my operations team and trying to ship to all the different countries in the world. And some countries won't even let our batteries to go into those countries. So you have to, there's so many challenges, even though there's no problem with the batteries here in the US. Who would have guessed that you'd have problems with a battery trying to just get into a country?
Right. Yeah. Well, tell me, how many markets are you currently in?
Give or take, we're in probably at least when regular annual orders, I'd say anywhere 5 to 6 different countries outside of the U.S., not including Mexico and Canada. We do a lot more in Canada than we do in Mexico, but it's all you can almost pretty much treat Canada like and Mexico like it's in the U.S., especially if you follow like the treaties and stuff. It's a lot easier than dealing with a lot of other foreign countries.
Great. Yeah, a lot of emphasis has been placed on USMCA. So I'm glad to hear that you're focused on those markets as well. Was there like a trigger point for you when you felt like, hey, we got this down, we can be in more than, North America, or we can be in more than 2 other foreign countries? Was there something a point in your development as a company where you felt like you had that bandwidth, or?
The bandwidth was with the market demand or the inquiry, and it all really, like going back to the original question, it all started with the website. Once we started getting some inquiries online, that's what then triggered us to go, okay, well, we don't know anything about, and I'll just pick on the UK. We don't know anything about the UK market. And how do you get into the UK market? Are there any restrictions on our products? How do we import it into that country? Even from the logistics side of flying things internationally, to even understanding market research of the opportunity in that country. Same thing with Australia. Australia is a much further distance too than even the UK, which causes things to also be more expensive. Each of these countries all have different unique challenges. What ultimately got us to decide to go into the particular markets is evaluating and doing like the customer discovery, as I like to call it, of finding out what kind of customers would actually be interested in our products or services in those countries. That's really, really critical. If you're trying to sell a widget into one country that doesn't maybe have the market or demand, especially from a B2B aspect, it's very much different than doing like a B2C side perspective. So any sort of exporting, really understanding the customer is just like you would in any new business here in Virginia or in the US. Understanding the market demand for that particular region is of utmost importance to make the ultimate decision to answer your question of why we personally would go into a market.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads me to another question, but then how do you get this intel on markets and on prospective partners?
100% from programs, from 100% from programs like yours, Aaron. I have no other resource I've ever been able to tap into, and I'm not just doing that as a part of one of the attendees. The primary reason why I'm in here is because it actually makes me sad how many businesses don't take advantage of your services more. And I think a portion of that might be, or that they don't necessarily take advantage of your services and all the other participants in this session here today. But I think and I mentioned this when we were meeting yesterday with Aaron, just for everyone, sharing with everyone, what resonates with me as a business owner is making money. And the thing I never hear, like from Ex-Im Bank and other programs like VEDP, even and Aaron, is what resonates with me is if your organizations say, we're going to make you money, we're going to make you more profitable, and we're going to give you more traction. That's what makes me excited about working with SBDC and everything that they offer, because if I understand the market, and I understand it in good and bad, the market might not be good for us, and the research reports might say that. I'm not going to be wasting money in that market trying to, get penetration into Turkey, for instance, and not knowing that we would have battery restrictions and know to have to totally develop an entirely different battery just to get into those markets. The challenge is getting the right research, and SBDC has by far been one of our best resources for that kind of market intelligence.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. It's always fun working with clients so that know kind of what are the conditions that are going to make them successful in that market. And so you bring a real clear understanding of your business model and your approach and what's going to work or not, which it's just a nice symbiotic relationship in that respect. So is it safe to say that one thing that you wish you would have known before you started exporting was just all the resources that are available to you through the SBDC, VEDP, Ex-Im, commercial service, etc.? Is that a safe thing to say?
Yeah, the challenge is, and even SCORE. I remember being a very young entrepreneur and going to SCORE, and SCORE was at 20, 30 years ago was struggling to give any guidance outside of, oh, you want to set up a handyman service level business. That's not going to be exporting. They're not going to be working with Ex-Im Bank. They're not going to be doing any of those kind of things with a handyman service, but with a technology company or a manufacturer or anything like that. A lot of the starting points is what you guys, I think, are doing more, or you're making a more proactive approach by even participating in this session today. Is I love the collaborative nature, because the only way that any of this is going to work, even for us small business owners, is you all communicating with one another, and then knowing when to tie in. And Aaron's mentioned this to me a couple of times. Hey, Chris, if I don't have the right answer, I think I know who does, such as with Ex-Im Bank. Ex-Im Bank can help you navigate the financial markets of that international trade aspect of things. And thank you so much for Ex-Im Bank for finally getting that program back, because I remember years ago when it was taken away. But anyways, at the end of the day, there's so many different resources even outside of SBDC. At the end of the day, I think the community that's encouraging exporting from the U.S. and us small businesses exporting, I think the message that all of these organizations need to make sure there's an emphasis on is making sure that the small business, us small business owners, or the people in charge of operations, the goal is to drive more revenue, make more money for the business. And it's very few times that I hear that out of all of the organizations, that that's what we're here to do. And I've even mentioned it several times, and Aaron doesn't like it when I say this, but Aaron's giving my business free money. When I'm asking him to do market research, I would in a particular country that I should be doing as a business owner, that's free money. That's money that I did not have to bring out of my pocket to drive more revenue. And that is absolutely of interest to my business. And if that narrative was said more, I think there would be, I think a lot more businesses would participate, especially from the manufacturing side, which is a very much an easy thing to export as long as it can be shipped. And then obviously also the new tech stuff that's coming out that can be such as software as a service and those kind of things that could be used even outside of the country.
That's a great reminder for us, Chris, and I appreciate you saying that because, yeah, I think all of the service providers, the government funded resources that are available, really emphasizing the outcomes and the value that we can add to your company with minimal, hopefully minimal time and, resources on your end. We're really kind of geared towards that. I know that when we do a market research report for companies, we just ask them for a minimum of 3 meetings over a couple months. And we pride ourselves in saying it's going to be less than 5 hours of meetings with us because we know you're busy. We just want to get you the information. We want to make sure that we have a clear scope of work that reflects what you are the information that you're interested in getting, and the client can sign off on that. And then we do a report. Usually it's about 4 to 6 weeks afterwards for you. And we do a presentation with that. And then if there's a follow-up after that, if there's additional questions, additional markets, more information on a specific one, we take the time to dig in deep there and then do another presentation for you. So we, always trying to make it that we're adding value to you, not taking away your time, but it's always a great reminder for us resource partners. Since this is being recorded though, Chris, what kind of advice do you have for companies and how they should engage with resource partners like VEDP, SBDC, Exim Bank on working with us? What would you recommend to your fellow peers?
I think the easiest way to do it is if there's any interest whatsoever in doing anything international, immediately go to pretty much everyone in this room or this virtual room speaking. It's not, oh my goodness. If I had my operations team on the phone, they could be able to explain all the nightmarish scenarios they've ran into. Just purely shipping can be an absolute nightmare internationally. And if it's not done right, based off the type of stuff you're doing, to understanding imports and exports and duties and the right terms, such as my favorite is never ship anything unless you're working with Exim Bank that doesn't have the term FOB on it. Just having FOB on your paperwork is everything when it comes to, and it stands for freight on board for those that aren't, exporters. But those little things can make all the difference in the world, and getting somebody to guide you through that process instead of trying to learn it yourself and learning the painful process of not putting FOB on your terms or freight on board can be the difference of getting paid on time versus not getting paid on time. So just start with everybody that's in here, and they can guide you on the right journey of the other groups that are all trying to help us export, because at the end of the day, that's why the federal government ultimately is funding all these organizations, is to have our businesses grow, us export more, which generates more revenue and leads to higher GDP for the country, right?
Absolutely. And that's a good point that you bring up, Chris, regarding Incoterms, and FOB is just one of a number of Incoterms, but it's a place that companies can get really tripped up if they want to just negotiate with a buyer overseas and they're unfamiliar with it and don't really understand the implications. Boy, it can just wipe away all of your profit on a transaction and create a real mess if you're not using the proper one and you're not on the same page with your importer.
Correct.
Now that you are kind of more of an experienced exporter, what challenges are you facing right now as an exporter?
Well, probably my biggest challenge is the constant scamming attempts. I can't tell you, I think it's at least once a week now. We get, hi, I'm with the so-and-so company. wanting to purchase your product, even from, and I'm sure some of you have gotten the Garmin GPS spam emails of we want to buy Garmin GPSs from your business. It's really, really frustrating, the number of scams. Probably some of the more sophisticated, unfortunately, come from Nigeria. We had one of our sales guys went through the entire process with them. I will say the number one thing to always do in any of this is protect your funds. So the thing that I was struggling with for the longest time, if you have just one operating account, maybe you have as a business, maybe you have your payroll in one account and then your operations account in another checking account. I would quite literally pay the $10 a month and have a completely separate checking account for all of your international payments and receipt of payments. Because at the end of the day, that's what a lot of these scammers are trying to get, is just your accounting department's payment information, so they can go into, I mean, there's ways to claw back transactions, but it's a nightmare if you have tens of thousands of dollars in a checking account. You give some scammer that's in some country, your accounting department, your banking information, so they can wire you funds to do the freight on board. And then they, instead of sending the money, they drain the account instead. And there's ways around that, of course, but I found the absolute best way to prevent these scammers from messing with your team or being financially exposed to anything internationally is to just have a separate international only bank account. And it's not like a special account. It's just have a separate checking account for international wire transfers.
Great advice, Chris. That is outstanding advice. And yeah, I think that's definitely the way that companies should approach this and have that in mind. And there's also a lot of resources as well through the government, through both VEDP at the state level and the US Commercial Service on the federal level, that will help you do some of that know your customer work. That'll make sure that the person that you're talking to overseas is a legitimate entity. So I encourage those of you who are listening to this as well to just kind of know that there are resources that you might be able to send a quick email to one of us and who can get you a decent verification right away, if whether this is a real inquiry or not, or if it's going to take a little bit more to from your due diligence and really sending somebody out from the US Embassy or through one of the consultants that VEDP uses, then they can do that as well. And there's usually a small fee related to that, but if it's going to be a big order or you think this is an important market, it's so important that you do that as well.
Yeah,
Chris,
and even knowing that you have that, even knowing, if I can add, even had we, even though we've been exporting, we didn't take advantage of that. So there's not in this one scenario, we had not taken advantage of that. And trust me, we've gone back and went, yeah, in the future, that's part of our standard operating procedure with any international new entity, especially, is to reach out to like Aaron's group and to do that vetting. And it doesn't need to be, they have the free options too. But if it is a higher dollar amount, it's absolutely worth just for knowing that the entity is a legitimate entity and not wasting your company's time, your sales team's time, and trying to scam people.
Great. Well, Chris, the last question I have for you, and then we can open it up to others if there are any questions from our other attendees, but just, is there anything else that you want to share regarding your journey as an exporter or any other parting advice?
I've thought about this question for a while, and there's no one group in this virtual setting that can solve all your problems, but as an aggregate, pretty much every single one of them can. reach out to one. I emphasized it a little bit earlier. And if XM Bank can't do research for you, which they usually don't do research like SBDC, but at the end of the day, there is one that can assist you from the basic level to the more comprehensive and aspect of getting into international markets. It's a heck of an opportunity. That old adage of the world is your oyster. It genuinely is. It's scary when you have not exported before, of just dealing with all the different challenges. But once you get through it, once you actually start the process, you have some really good mentors. I've always been a big fan of leveraging the skill sets that are others that are smarter than me in other things. And this group, this team, pretty much everyone that's in here is very well educated in the challenges, the pitfalls, and the strengths of exporting, and how to do it correctly and the most efficiently. At the end of the day, it's an important part of our business, and it definitely drives revenue for our company.
Great. Chris, thank you so much for that. I think before I open it up, and you can just unmute yourself if you have a question, but I did want to put in the chat here a program that is coming up. It is in Norfolk. So for those of you local to the 757, this might be of interest to you. It's on February 28th. It's a morning long program that is being organized by the U.S. Commercial Service, which is part of the Department of Commerce. But we will have people from the SBDC, people from DEDP, people from XM Bank, SBA. We'll have a number of private sector entities there as well. It should be a great event. So if you're there and getting this, feel free to come by. It is no cost to do this, to attend this event. So just wanted to put that in there for your maybe next steps if this is interesting to you. So we have a few minutes here. If there's anybody who has a question for Chris or me, we're welcome to take that, or welcome to let you guys get going with the rest of your day.
This is Dan. Thanks to Chris and Aaron for the session. Chris, I have a question with respect to international export. What have you faced with regard to, I'll just say, the level of international corruption that can exist in certain countries, and it's certain countries do and certain countries don't. So have you faced any of that directly? And if so, what have you done about that?
Corruption in terms of false orders, or all of the above, or people?
All the above, but additional layered fees, things of that nature, making it more expensive and more time consuming to get products in.
Yeah, I actually have experienced that, and haven't been able to. I actually went on it was actually really disappointed with our neighbor to the south, Mexico. I had actually flown with one of our hoist cams to Mexico as a demonstration piece. And there's certain gotchas when you go and I made the comment earlier that, Canada and Mexico are pretty much, like doing business in North America. It's a totally different beast when you actually go to Mexico and you're physically there and you get off a plane and you're rolling in with a $10,000 camera. We actually got stopped by customs, even though we had the paperwork and a commercial invoice with us. So there's those little things that you have to prep. I had all that with us. It was our property. It was listed as our property, and they taxed us as if we were importing it into Mexico, even though there was a free trade agreement in place at that time. There was nothing I could do. I contacted an attorney. It ended up costing us $1,200 in customs duties and fees. And what we were basically told is we were just being extorted on the process. They saw me rolling in there with some expensive hardware. I'm like, hey, that's an easy grab. Let's nail this guy. I did not have any workaround for it. I talked to an attorney over there in Mexico, and it was going to cost more for the attorney than just paying the $1,200. It stunk. It cost more in those duties than even flying down there and doing the sales trip. But there's just so many different angles you have to be careful of, and that's why the team's here. You know, I learned my lesson from there. I'm not sure what I would have been able to do differently. And just like with the other example I gave earlier of someone just trying to do a false order with us and trying to get our bank account information, there's just you know, there's lots of really good guidelines and, that like Aaron's organization can help provide for guidance of, you know, setting up internationally, doing terms and everything else. Just navigating the waters and just be prepared.
And Chris, I gotta tell you that, you know, we could have saved you $1,200 on that, because there's a thing called an ATA carnet, which is essentially like a passport for your product, and it allows for the temporary export or import of that, where you do not need to pay duties as long as it's being used for demo and you don't have that intent to sell it in that market. So, you know, I think it's like, you know, very reasonably priced to get one, not a whole lot of paperwork involved. So next time, keep that in mind. Feel free to reach out to us and we'll make sure that, you know, you're connected on that, so that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, that's great advice. We learned our lesson on that one.
Yeah, for sure. So John, I saw that you had unmuted. Do you have a question or comment or anything?
No, not really. I mean, I guess in regards to your sales in the international arena, are you offering open account sales or open account terms and ensuring those sales, or are you demanding cash in advance or letters of credit?
We 100% just been doing FOB or freight on board. So we'll start, if we've had a relationship with them and sold before, we'll do freight on board. So we'll start building the system, but we will not let it leave our facility until we get the funds here in Norfolk.
Okay.
From there, the first time we engage somebody, absolutely cash in hand, or we're not doing anything. The only outside of that, and we have not had this opportunity yet internationally, is your very large conglomerates. So you have very, very large business entities that we personally have not worked with. We've talked with them they're just as difficult as large, you know, big Fortune 500s doing business here in the States. And they're going to demand terms. If and when we ever got that business internationally and there's no other way to do terms, that's when personally our business would engage Ex-Im Bank. If we have to provide international terms, we know that they're there. We haven't had to use them because the vast majority, I mean, we're not turning, you know, $1 million sales. We do like a couple, like 10, 20, maybe 50 grand a turn each time. And we just tell the business, no, you just need to pay that up front. A lot of them shouldn't have a problem doing that. It's when you start getting into 6 or 7 figures that your accounting departments, especially internationally, want to try to get terms.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, Stephen.
Hey, I'm interested to know on your marketing overseas, did you participate in any industrial trade shows there? If you did, what was your experience on that? And also in terms of any advertising and marketing overseas?
Yeah, my favorite in terms of marketing are the trade shows. And there's a lot of good programs here in the state of Virginia to help fund that. The one actually we just did quite literally 5 months ago was one of the world's largest construction expos called Con Expo in Germany. And a good chunk of that was subsidized by the VEDP portion of their programs, where they provide assistance and funding for attending international trade shows. I highly recommend in person and getting out there. There's just nothing like doing a sale or building your brand in a particular region than going to the international trade shows. I personally have never done any of the more state-sponsored ones. So like the state of the U.S. will have or a country of the U.S. will have a delegation in the country, and a lot of the trade shows and have like, hey, these are, Virginia-based companies, and I haven't done that yet. We've just done a lot of our own individual shows. I've heard good success in U.S.-sponsored ones, and it also just depends on the region you're going to. And I would definitely talk with other companies if you're going to do any of those state-sponsored shows, because some countries, it doesn't even matter. And from my experience, it doesn't matter if you even have a presence there for that week or two that you're maybe out there. The second you leave and nobody's there, they don't see your company anymore, so that you might as well not even be in that country anymore. So just always kind of keep that in mind if you do any marketing in that region. If there's not some sort of representation, like a sales rep or a manufacturer's rep that's out there for you, actually, knocking on doors, meeting with prospects, you may not want to go into that country if you're not ready to do that yet.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, the VEDP, though, offers a lot of different grants that can help you attend trade shows and lessen the cost on that. And they also bring companies to some of the big ones around the world too. So, well, I think if we don't have any other questions, Jane, did you want to ask a question?
If you have a minute, yes, I'd love to kind of jump in and follow up on a couple of the points that Chris made.
Sure.
I'm telling you,
Please.
the story that Chris, you just shared is exactly what we love to hear, that exporter's journey of how you got from the beginning to where you're at now. And I wanted to follow up on a couple of the points that you made. We at XM do really strive to collaborate with every single one of the other partners on here, plus the commercial service, so that you have somebody there to support you at each point along the journey. And we come in later in the journey for sure when you're actually have a customer and you're ready to export. And I would just reiterate, because I work specifically with small businesses, that one of our primary things is to make sure a small business can offer those open account terms, regardless of what size the sale is. And that's the point where we do a certain amount of research, do some due diligence to make sure that if you have a sale with a foreign buyer, that particular international buyer is going to be able to repay you. Obviously, our role is to insure you in case something does go wrong, but we don't want something to go wrong. So we're there to help with that due diligence. One other fun point that you mentioned, and we hear this sometimes from companies, we'll be at a trade show somewhere and we'll say, hey, do you guys export your products? And they'll be, no, we don't really export, but we sell into Canada, we sell into Mexico. And we'd love to reiterate that, yeah, that is exporting, which means that you do qualify for the support that we and all the other agencies give you, but people don't, as everyone knows, people don't always think of it that way. And then the last point I would make, because I do a lot of the marketing, I work in that particular agency with XM for our small businesses, is that we feel like we do try to tell people how we impact your bottom line, but I'm thinking we need to redouble our efforts. We're all about making sure that people realize that we're there to make sure that if you have any problems in getting paid, that we will make you whole on that deal. So anyway, that was a lot of points I wanted to follow up on, because that was a great story you just shared with everybody. So I want to thank you for that.
Sorry, I'm muted.
Yeah, thank you.
Jane,
That's great.
thank you. Those were some great points of emphasis as well with XM Bank too. All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time. I know you had to be on the road unexpectedly, but appreciate you joining us here today and sharing that. And Dan, thank you so much for hosting us today. And I'll let you close us out here.
All righty. Well, my thanks to you both and to all the participants that joined us. And I think it was a great session, great information. And again, to follow Chris's journey through this over the past few years has been at least rewarding from my perspective, but even more so for his and Natara. So I think it was great, Chris, that you were willing to share that information. So this session again.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
You're very welcome. This session has been recorded. I'll send the link out, the YouTube link out to all participants, so that if anybody's got any questions down the road, they can always rewatch the session and get reminded of some of the answers that Chris offered. So thank you all very much. Our next session will be with Microsoft in March. I can't recall the date, but just look at the website, look at the materials. But we're in talking about AI with Microsoft DoD. So that should be very interesting as well. See if the guy really shows up or if it's something else that that gives the talk. So it's beautiful weather here. Everybody enjoy your day, and thanks for joining our Tech Tuesday. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.